Welcome to Women on Men, the podcast where we explore masculinity through the eyes of women. Together, we challenge stereotypes, rethink traditional roles, and discover what it means to be a man today. I'm your host, Rafael Gomez. My guest today is Kat Clark. Kat is a relational and somatic coach as well as an interior designer on the island of Kauai. She was raised as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more commonly known as the Mormon Church, and has recently left the religion and become a student of curiosity, the divine feminine, expanding consciousness and desire. She has 4 children and has been married to her husband, Michael, for 21 years. Kat is authentic, passionate, conversational, and candid. Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Kat, in your work as a relational coach, you probably work with a lot of men. Is there a common theme or challenge that comes up for them in relationships?
I think there's a common theme in humanity called ego. But I guess when you ask that question, that's the first thing that came to mind is ego.
Ego. Okay. Yeah. Like you said, it is pretty human. It's not necessarily just men, but, we struggle with it as well. So I'm going to ask the first question for the podcast. What does masculinity mean to you? And not the stereotypes we often hear about, but how do you define it in your worldview?
I would say, um, I would just say that for me, masculinity is like the wandering awe. It's the explorer and it's the wanderer and it's the awe seeker. And I feel like that's what true masculinity is.
So it's exploration, it's seeking answers, truth, adventure. Or when you say awe, how do you mean awe?
Well, I think that the awe comes in, especially when the masculine meets the feminine. I think that that's when that moment of like wonder and seeking really translates into awe. But I feel like the masculine is meant to seek and explore and like build. And yeah, I feel it. I don't know.
No, I get it. I've told Lucy the same thing. I don't have a one all end all
No,
definition
I
either.
definitely don't. I can't claim myself to be an expert, but I love a conversation. I
Right.
would say I love an idea, any idea.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's called exploring masculinity because I think that's something we want to do. We just want to
yeah,
explore it. I don't think, I think there's traditional and stereotypical stereotypes of what people think of as masculine. So I like to ask this question because I think what people will find is that a lot of people have different definitions. Yours is totally different from Lucy's, probably
totally.
totally different from other people. So I find that interesting. So when let's say you find yourself curious or awe-seeking,
Yes,
do you find that to be a masculine trait then if you're doing that? Okay.
I do. I do. I feel like um, when there's like an outward directed energy and attention, I feel like that is definitely a more masculine focus from me, like by me. And when I do a more like inward sort of center out, like from the middle out, that feels very more feminine and holding. And I feel like the feminine is more creation and power, and the masculine is that seeking and like outward focused awe. And I
That's
think
so
that
interesting.
even in the concept of like a I'll just go there, like a phallus, right? Like it is erect, it grows, it's like it shows, it's out, it's visible in the world, right? And
Yeah.
and then in the opposite, it's like the zeros and the ones, like if we got
Yeah.
like into like the matrix conversation or whatever, it's like the one, is seeking open and out, and the zero there is that inward creative power. So
And you think sort of like a yin and yang, maybe there's a little bit of both in us, like a both
I
we both
think
have the zeros and the ones.
100%. I think that it's like so imperative actually that I think that that is what ego is like an imbalanced expression of the masculine and feminine. I think that for each of us, we find layers of ego through imbalance. And really what's so curious about the word imbalance is that imbalance is almost the same as balance, because in my view, as someone who like Lucy, is a yogi, if you've ever attempted like an inversion, like a handstand,
Oh yeah.
and if you like slowed the video down of someone doing a handstand and holding a handstand, they're literally in constant motion, right? So is that balance or imbalance? It's kind of the same. I think that that's the idea too of this masculine feminine balance in game and dance, and then the layers of ego is that we have both expressions within us, and each time we do a layer of the work, whatever type of work you want to describe, and each time we bring forward authenticity and uncover who we are, we're just gearing ourselves, reorienting ourselves towards that balance of masculine and feminine.
And do you think it's healthy for everyone to have a balance of the two, or do you think men? Because I do think men, if they hear they're doing anything feminine, a lot of them recoil a little bit,
Yeah.
and especially the men I'm trying to reach, I don't think that's something that they're excited about. But do you think it's healthy for people to have a balance, or do you think you should lean into one of these energies more?
I think it's fine to lean in, but I think that anything that we recoil from, we should actually train ourselves to move towards. I think that
Interesting.
whatever makes us recoil is actually the most valuable information we could ever get curious about.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there that saying that like basically what you want is on the other side of your hardship or something like that? Like it's kind of like that same thing where it's like maybe explore that a little bit. Why is it such a bad thing to have a feminine trait or
Totally.
to do something that, is considered feminine? And
Totally.
why does that make you scared or ashamed or in any way?
Right. And I think what's great about the conversation that you're starting is that we're moving beyond just like the societal labels of masculine and feminine. I can be like, I'm a masculine lady, or you can be like, I'm a feminine lady. But like, literally, that's just a societal construct of what that actually
Right.
means, right?
Right.
And it's like, think of all the thousands of years that men and women have existed and coexisted. And it's like a caricature of
Yeah.
what the true, like, original concept of masculine and feminine were. And so like if we are like flexing, and we go back to my original definition of masculinity being like this seeker, this explorer of awe and wonder, it's like that does take like a boldness and a muscle, right? That does maybe take. And so maybe that's where the caricature came from. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I think we have to go beyond
Yeah.
traditional societal concepts of what it means to be masculine and feminine, because for me, it is incredibly attractive when a man can name his feelings, feel
Right.
his feelings, sit with them, work through them, own them, talk about them. And someone might say, that's so feminine. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it is. That is a feminine trait. That is a feminine quality. And it is vital. It's imperative for that balance of ego. But it's so underrated and undersourced in community and in society. And it's like, yeah, I really do want a guide. It's like, I really do want a guy who can talk about his feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want as many men to hear that as possible because I think that's something that we can get into later. I think when we get
Yeah.
into masculinity myths here in a second, but that is one of the ones that's most common is that being vulnerable, you become seen as less attractive, and it's like, well, I think it depends on your partner, and I think the kind of partner you want, you're going to want them to want you to be vulnerable. I think the kind of women that, are get the ick from you being vulnerable, I don't think you really want to be with them. I mean, I wouldn't want to spend much time with them.
Right.
Um, but I think you're on the money that I think most of what we see as masculine and feminine typically comes from societal values that have been placed on us, or we've seen through media, or we've seen through TV. So the next segment is called masculinity myths, and this is where I make a statement about masculinity, and you
Yeah.
say whether you think it's a true statement in your worldview.
Okay.
So I have five.
Okay.
So the first one: men who earn less than their partners are less valuable.
No way. That
Okay.
doesn't matter at all.
A man who can't provide financially isn't a real man.
No, no,
Women prefer alpha males over kind or empathetic men
no. I like answering these questions. I mean, they're
because they're
just
easy.
like, oh,
Of
personal.
course.
Good. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
If you're
Sorry.
not above 6 feet tall, you have no chance of being successful with women.
No.
Men should always lead the relationship.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
5 for 5, just easy nopes, just easy swipe rights. Yeah, I
No.
mean, I bring these up because I think, again, this is what I hear so much online,
Yeah.
and I want people to hear this. Like, look, I'm asking someone who's been married for 21 years if any
Yeah.
of these even stands true, and she's saying no, that's not the
Yeah.
case.
No, of course. And I love too that I have this opportunity to sort of talk about it as someone who came from a very trad wife background.
It's
Like
true.
was raised by a trad wife. I am one of 8 children. I was raised in the Mormon Church, very traditional family-based values. And again, that that can mean a lot of different things, but I think people pick up on what I'm talking about. And then, I have 4 kids of my own. I had my first child at 23. I got married at 19 years old.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And so I did that. I stayed home. I supported my husband through medical school, through residency. I didn't have my own career until about 6 years ago when I started doing interior design. And then over the last 2 years, I've become, a somatic and relational coach. And all the while, I've been transitioning out of this religion that I was raised in and just finding that my true value set and personal resonance was completely misaligned with what I was being fed by this religion. And so a lot of what you're talking about was represented in the religion that I was in. Maybe it's less sharp or staccato. It was softened, it
Hmm.
was polite and kind, but it truly was a culture of the man provides, the man is the head of the household, the the children are the wife's job,
Hmm.
the highest most important um the most important thing of all is your marriage and your family and exalting yourselves to heaven through
Yeah.
having a marriage and a family in this dynamic of the man is the head of the household, the woman rears and raises the children. These are your roles, the
Yeah.
end, right? And that left so much damage to the men and the women. And it's been an untangling and an
Yeah.
unfolding. And it's been a real challenge, but it's also been such a beautiful exploration as a 40-year-old woman. And people might look at me and be like, oh, she's just having a midlife crisis. Sure. I would say I'm having a midlife awakening or
Ooh,
crisis.
I
Like,
like
really,
that.
there's no hierarchy there. Like, crisis, awakening, like, what enlivening, like, detriment. There's, good and bad is all a construct. But I'm finally alive. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I can feel my breathing. I can feel my feelings. And so it's like the spell's been broken and I get to observe and be curious and ask questions and engage. And so many of those societal constructs and the religious constructs that I grew up with geared towards um, a pigeonholed archetype of masculinity were detrimental not just to me as a woman in the Mormon Church, but the men, the
Yeah.
men in the church, you know. And
Yeah.
so, go ahead.
What when did you start to realize that maybe the traditions that were being exemplified and taught to you weren't necessarily the way you wanted to live your life? And did your husband have to shift gears a little bit because maybe he grew up around it too, I'm thinking?
Well, he's still a member of the church.
Okay.
And he is, yes, and he was raised and he was raised in a family of 13 children. So,
Yeah.
we've got like stereotypical Mormon family here,
Yeah.
sides on both sides. So for me, I feel like moving to Kauai was like, it was subtle and it
Hmm.
was slow at first, this sort of like unraveling. And it for me, it started, I would say, with like the funny underwear. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with the Mormon Church.
We just saw Book of Mormon a couple of days
Oh,
ago in LA or in Long Beach. But yeah, we did. I mean, that's my second time seeing it, but it's so
yeah, that's
fresh that it's kind of
awesome.
funny.
Yeah. So like the funny underwear is really hard to wear in a climate like Kauai. Like
Yeah.
you're just literally sopping wet, sweating constantly. Because for women, it's like a garment, an
Yeah.
undergarment that you wear to your knees. And then it's got these short sleeves. And they've modified them over the years or what
Sure.
according to, yeah. Anyway, and so for me, I would say that was the beginning. It's like I can't physically do this. Like I was pregnant when we moved here. It was so hard, but then there was so much guilt and shame around not, keeping upholding this commitment that I had made to wear these, sacred garments. And so as sort of like just biology took over and my body was like, we can't survive a day in a regular day in this gear. Then it's like, oh, okay, that becomes undone. And then I start to make friends with people outside of the Mormon community. And it's like, wait, you can drink Diet Coke all day long, but you can't have like a glass of tea. And it's like, why not? And so then, the questions begin being asked to me. And then I'm faced and forced to ask the questions myself. So I would say that's how it unravels, which I think is kind of what you're doing with your podcast, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to unravel for sure.
You're asking like fundamental foundational questions that society is placing on masculinity, and you're being like, okay, but like, can we actually have a conversation about this?
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's beautiful to discover self through that curious explanation. And I'm so grateful, to use like a very religious word, but truly I have this gratitude for
Hmm.
anyone who asked me a hard question that I couldn't answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think you have a unique perspective on how traditional relationships are, and sounds like over the 21 years you've been living your marriage the way you think is better or better fit. And you guys have, I think, said, what society deems isn't necessarily what works best for me, and maybe it's actually kind of detrimental to all try to live in this one box that either the
like,
church or society puts on us. I think right now with masculinity, men are kind of putting it on themselves, like they're kind of self subjugating their gender to these rules, this rigidity that doesn't need to exist. The idea that men don't want to go to therapy because they think it shows some sort of weakness or it shows some sort of deficiency in them, when they don't realize that it actually takes a great deal of strength to ask for help and seek it and decide to assert yourself to do it. I think
love
it's
that word
actually,
that you said. That is assertive.
yeah,
That is assertive. It's
yeah.
so brave. It is so brave. That vulnerability, that authenticity to be like, oh, I'm struggling. I need help. That's assertive.
Yeah, I think men confuse strength, which is I think a stereotypical masculine trait. They confuse it for physical strength when I think they overlook emotional and internal strength, which I think is actually probably more attractive in the long run, is showing that fortitude inside emotionally, and to say, hey, here's who I really am. Here are the things I'm struggling with, and I'm working on these things. I think that takes more strength than hitting the gym and going to, I know, jujitsu classes and pretending.
Not really low,
Yeah,
tight shirt
exactly.
club, like cute, but no, not.
Yeah, I think I think strength is comes in many forms, and it's not just the one that I think a lot of men subscribe to. That'll lead us to our next segment, and this segment is called Partner Priorities.
Yeah,
Now,
that was hard.
yeah, I know.
It was hard because I was trying to answer this segment
Yeah.
from 19-year-old Kat when she got married.
Yeah.
Then like
Oh, that's
5 years
true.
after that. And then now, so I actually needed like a third segment. I probably should have told you that, but anyway, go on. Okay, let's
That's
see.
that's a good point. Maybe when I'm talking to people in longer relationships, we can do a third segment to,
Yeah,
15 years in,
like
or
now.
or
Yeah.
yeah, or now. Yeah, exactly. So this exercise is called Partner Priorities. Prior to joining the show, I asked you to rank 10 traits in order of importance from when you first meet a guy, and then re-rank them 5 years into the relationship. Now, these traits are, give me a second. This is the part that I need to figure out. Um, So these traits, from the traits below, looks, confidence, personality, humor, intelligence, kindness, ambition, emotional intelligence, financial stability, and reliability. Now, in your exercise, you chose your top three as kindness, personality, and humor. So this is when you first meet somebody. These are the traits that matter to you the most. Can you talk to me about these three?
I think there's still definitely relevance to those traits now, but I was thinking back to myself at 19 and what really attracted me to my partner, to Michael then. And we laughed so hard together. He was incredibly kind, which was very different. My father was very angry, and explosive, and he was so even keeled and so kind. And anytime like I would make a mistake, or even if we were arguing, like he wouldn't raise his voice. So that was like what that was so appealing, so attractive. And what was the other one that I put?
Personality and humor.
Yeah. I mean, and I think those are pretty close, but he is like a fun mother funner, and like the two of us together.
Wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. We get both of us are fun, and then the two of us together back then and now, like laughing together is truly one of our favorite pastimes. So
I totally relate to that. I'd say these are high on my list as well. I mean, I think men have different priorities. I've never done the exercise for men. I'm trying to focus on women's
yeah.
attraction. But I do also agree that, I think humor is one of those things that not only can initially attract you, but can sustain you in a relationship as well. And personality, I do feel like I'm cheating a little bit by throwing that in there. But I also think personality kind of encompasses things that maybe humor doesn't, and kindness doesn't. It's just who they are and how they
Yeah.
talk. And
Well, would it be okay if I told you like kind of a little bit of it, like
of
a
course.
okay, so when we were married, we'd maybe been married for like a year or two. And I remember we were on a road trip somewhere to like South Carolina or something. And I'm like, what was something and I said to him, um, oh, something that surprised me like over time. I thought you were this, and now I see that you're this.
Hmm.
I was like, I thought you were super cool, like a really cool guy. And I was like, you're kind of a dork. And I love it. Like, I mean, like obviously we've made it 21 years. Like I'm into the dorkiness.
Yeah.
Like originally when we started dating, I was like, oh, cool. Like this guy is
Right.
cool. And now I'm like, no, he's like the dorkiest dork. And I love it. But something I'm like, so I turned the question on him and I'm like, what surprised you about me that's like you're realizing is different now than when we first got married? And like without missing a beat, without even thinking, he goes, that you're smart.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait, what? I was like, what? So you just married like a pretty idiot? What? I was like, no, I just didn't know how smart you were. Like, so, but like, I thought of this because I would be curious to ask him, like, at the
Yeah.
time, what were really like your top three? Intelligence was probably not in his top
I don't
three.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And that was a bonus for him. So that's funny.
Yeah.
Your bottom three, which I find interesting as well: financial stability, reliability, and looks. Talk to me about those if you can.
So that goes again along with how I felt as that 19-year-old. First of all, I was 19. Like I was working at Zoomies. It's a skateboard snowboard
I
shop.
remember that now. That
Yeah.
just like was a flashback.
Yeah, I wore like a studded belt and like etnies, and yeah, it was super cute. And I'm like, I've like got one semester of college under my belt. I have no idea who I am or what I'm gonna do. And then, but he had been accepted to medical school, but I also knew that was at least like an 8-year road.
Yeah.
And so like ambition was there, but like financial stability was like so far down the road. It was like I knew that I was going to be taking on the role of some type of provider, even as like college students, because medical school was going to be like full time. He wasn't going to have this job, so there was that in terms of financial stability that just didn't like. Maybe in the moment it didn't matter. Maybe because I knew there was a financial plan ahead, but I mean, I waited a lot of tables, let's just say that. And I was pregnant. I was so pregnant waiting tables. And then reflect back to me my other
Sure.
two.
Reliability and looks.
The reliability was also a part of the game. It was also a part of the compromise because, like our first couple months of being married, he took an exam, he almost failed. And it was like, I can't spend as much time with you as I'm spending. And I mean, if you were my therapist, you would be like, red flag. Like our codependence was like woven thick, and we've done a lot of good therapy, but I'm just saying at the time
Sure.
I allowed reliability to not be something that I needed. I was like, okay, I have these other things, and reliability, like I have to be the reliable one. And that was a
Yeah.
very masculine thing for me to do, isn't it? For her to
Yeah.
be like, I have to be a provider and I have to be the reliable one that schedules tasks and gets the oil changes in the car and different things because he has to study. Medical school is like that, it's everything, you know. And then the last one was looks, yeah.
Looks. Hmm.
But yeah. Okay, so I'm 5'5". My partner's 5'5".
All
He's short.
right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he's a tiny guy. He's a little
All
guy. He's a
all
little chicken
right.
nugget. You just fit him in your back pocket. Uh, no, he's handsome. His face is
Sure.
handsome. He's super fit. Like he's always just had a physique and he eats like trash. It's super annoying. Literally like Dr. Clark eats like he has like a rock star for breakfast and like a candy bar at lunch. I mean, it's not that bad, almost that bad. So he's fit and he's handsome, but he's little. He's
Yeah.
tiny. And actually, our first interaction, the first time we met face to face, I said, "You're short." And he said, "I'm taller than you." And I said, "No, you're not." And we turned around and went back to back, and we were the exact same height. If you ask him how tall he is, he'll tell you he's 5'6", but we are 5'5". And yeah. And so I feel like that really is an important part of this marriage is that like it didn't matter. I mean, like obviously, like I said, he is handsome, he's fit, but his height,
Yeah.
like that was one of the first questions you asked me, right? I was in those like
Hmm.
6 foot thing, the six
Yep.
foot. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not attracted to tall men and I'm only attracted to short men,
Sure.
but my body and the resonance between us was so immediate and acute, even despite like my mind and my like verbal like protestation and being like, "You're too short." Like,
Hmm.
married the guy. Here we are. So
21 years later, so this is definitely the kind of content I want out there
oh,
because I want I
good.
want men to know, look, how wonderful a relationship you can have even if you're 5'5". You don't need to be, I was looking at a stat today. I think supposedly in the US 51% of men are married or women are married, and it's like obviously people are getting married. Obviously not everyone's 6 foot tall. Not everyone is a millionaire, and
Yeah,
people still get married.
yeah,
So
totally.
I'm trying to show those examples because you guys are exactly that.
Yeah, and I like to just be like moderately sort of like I'm just gonna say something and you can edit
Do
this
it.
out. Let's
Do
take a
it.
we'll pause for the audio. Okay. If you've ever been to a co-ed nude spa, I
Mhm.
will just say,
All right.
like, surprising. Like size and height and all the different things, shape, they just don't matter. The incongruence is mind-boggling, but
I love it.
it's
Yeah.
totally cool. So it's just like I don't know why we keep seeking this mold. Like
Yeah.
they have blow up dolls. Go find one if you need that one thing. Sorry. You can edit all of that out. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's important to share that. You're right.
They
All
have
kinds of
male
shapes and
and female
sizes.
blow up dolls. Okay.
Right,
Like I'm
exactly.
it forward.
Yeah, and like just because someone's 6 foot tall and good looking doesn't mean, they're gonna have all the other traits that matter to you.
No.
And you can, it's hard to marry someone's height. You're marrying someone as a person. You're marrying their entire personality,
Totally.
how they treat you, how do they regulate their emotions. That tends to matter more than their height. But a lot of men believe that that isn't the case.
And that is just the saddest limiting belief ever. And
Yeah,
truly it is a protective limiting belief, right?
for
It's the
sure.
armor, it's the self-applied armor that really is just like tinfoil and gauze and duct tape. And it's like so adorable. It's not a knight in shining armor.
No,
It's
that's a
just
great way to put it.
limiting belief of like, I'm gonna patch myself up over time, protect my authentic self from ever showing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call myself your knight in shining armor who has no wounds and no weaknesses and no humanity except for I'm a buff guy.
Right. And what's sad too, another thing that a lot of the red pill men say in comment is don't listen to what women say, watch what they do. And they say that as a way to basically say, okay, Kat said 5'5" is okay, but I don't believe her. I don't believe her because I see guys out there or girls out there dating only 6 foot guys. And it's like, okay, that's like confirmation bias as well. You know, you're basically just looking for the stat that validates you, and you're ignoring what people are actually saying. And I think that's the thing I'm ready to combat. I think with this content
Yeah,
is that they're gonna say, "Oh, well, that's what they say," but it's like, well, these people are actually married to these people. They're actually
yeah,
with these partners, and they're happy with them. So
totally. Oh,
maybe,
bravo. Good for you for asking those hard questions and then challenging the limiting
yeah,
belief. Yeah. And it's like the other thing too is if there is a girl out there who's only dating 6 foot and up, who is, like, oh, she's gonna say one thing and do another, like, do you want to be with that girl?
exactly.
Is
I
that what you're looking for?
I certainly
Like,
hope not.
well,
That's where the self respect
maybe
has to
they
come
need each
in.
other. I don't know
Yeah,
what or why, but like if you're saying you want like a compassionate, intelligent, you know, embodied, emotional, sensual, sexual woman, then look for that. Like,
exactly.
what are your standards? All of
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. So 5 years later, your top three changes just a little bit.
Yeah.
Your first is looks, second is ambition, and your third is humor. I gotta say, when I saw looks up there at the top, 5 years later, that was the one I wanted to talk about because I typically see looks matters less as time goes on. But you were like, you know what? Let's move that one up.
Yeah. And I think that goes along with sort of watching my husband sort of like age in reverse. And
Okay.
it's like the most magical Benjamin Button of like, I mean, like he has some gray hair now and like, he's like losing some hair here and he's like, oh, and I'm like, bruh, you still look like a 25-year-old kid. Like, I don't know. And look, maybe that's a benefit of being 5'5" is that he's like, looks like a little guy. I don't know. But like, the youth is also attributed to the height. I'm not sure. But I think I started to really be like, damn, this guy's just like keeping it together. He's holding it down. Like he's not changing. Whether he's like hitting the gym or not, like there's always something about him that's just like youthful and vibrant and attractive. And I was like, I think I just really appreciated that his looks lasted. And I was like, that was really I think it's more about like just this deep appreciation for what I have and what I
Yeah.
had as it evolved.
I like that. And then ambition and humor. So humor stayed there. That's still,
Oh,
like you said, very important for you and your relationship. What about ambition?
so that became really like prominent post like between medical school and residency. Those last 2 years of medical school are really pivotal. You start like doing rounds and rotations and seeing where you're gonna, what field you're gonna go into, what field in medicine, and then you start traveling around the country to visit different residency programs. And so that just took a lot of ambition, and
Hmm.
that was so attractive to me to see him sort of doing the hard thing, putting in the work, and just leveling up from just being like a student to suddenly being like, no, I'm going to map out our future. I mean, we start talking about like annual salaries of different types of physicians, and like we start talking about, long-term like savings accounts and savings plans and how we're going to put our kids through college. And we don't even have children at that point. And so there was this broader vision of ambition and planning. And again, that like seeking,
Hmm.
right?
I was gonna bring it back to that. Yeah.
That just felt so exciting, and it made me feel very like held,
Okay.
very, yeah. So to see him doing something that was so difficult and yet including me in this planning process and doing it for our future and our lives, and then pushing through the limits of comfort. Like he's very conversational, very relatable, um, but also the amount of like interviews he subjected himself to, like he just didn't stop. Like he was like, I might not want to live in New Hampshire, but I want to get into residency and we are going to apply there. Like it just, you know what I mean? And so that was very attractive around that time.
Totally understand that. It goes back to what you said being masculine is all about, even. And I think, obviously planning for your future and trying to build the life for you guys goes a long way in terms of what matters. I do want to, on the bottom three, you have financial stability, reliability, and kindness. Now, do you see a distinction between ambition and financial stability?
I do. I
Okay.
do. Because I lived that at the time. So as ambitious as he was and as dedicated as he was to sort of our future at the time, like in residency, he was working like literally 100 to 120 hours a week, and he was making like 38 to $45,000 a year. And
Oh
he was getting
man,
paid pennies on the dollar. He was working so many hours. It was like like I can't. It sounds like a nightmare. It
it
was,
does.
and we had nothing. And I
Yeah.
had children, and I had 1 to 2 children, depending on the time span. And so I couldn't work. I taught classes at the gym. I made $20 a class. I taught fitness classes even through my second pregnancy. And then we got free passes to the gym. And that was like our pastime. That
Yeah.
was
Oh,
what we did
wow.
for fun. And so we were so financially unstable. And I would go to like 3 grocery stores and price match and coupon clip and like do everything I could to make the tiny amount of dollars we had go. But he was still so ambitious. He was still so driven.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Your
Yeah.
story is very interesting. I got to say, like that alone, I could talk to you about your story so long. Like this is, and 21 years of marriage and to talk about your husband in the way that you do, like a lot of marriages don't feel that way. So it's really cool for you to share that.
Thank you.
Reliability and kindness. Talk to me about why those are in the bottom three.
Um, I think just at the time, 5 years after, kindness wasn't a priority, not because he was unkind,
Sure.
just because we had other priorities. And so I wasn't worried about his kindness. I was I was always like looking to the future. And I'm not even saying that that's like the best or most healthy way, because like I mentioned before, like codependence is real, but I just don't think kindness was really like just wasn't there in terms of like something I needed. But then that being said, like is the sweetest father, like
Hmm.
gentle and tender with his children and when they were babies and toddlers. And so there was so much kindness. I just don't think it was like maybe it was something I was taking for granted and didn't recognize that was attractive or attracting.
Makes a lot of sense.
Does
It makes a
that?
lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just touch on reliability a little bit.
He was so unreliable at that
He
time.
just because he's busy, probably because
Yeah,
you
during
said he was.
residency, like so like for instance, he was in Tucson when Gabrielle Giffords was shot. She was a politician
Mm,
shot, and I was hosting a baby shower at our home. He had our children, and I was hosting a baby shower for another friend. And literally, like any medical personnel, I mean, it just like the entire city of Tucson, everyone just got called in. And so it was like suddenly the kids were dumped in my lap, and he wasn't even on call, and he was at the hospital to do whatever he could, even if it was just like, handing somebody gauze. I don't know what he did that day. And so that is like an extreme example that like I couldn't rely on him like for
yeah.
anything. I was like on my own all the time. And that's how our marriage started, if you remember too. Like when he almost failed that first exam
Right.
after we married. And so like the reliability just was not, I just figured it out. I just had to figure it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
these priorities. That leads us to our final segment, which I call Dear Men. And this is where you get to give your honest advice to men. And the prompt is, and you can do whatever you want, but the prompt is, what is something you wish men knew about attraction and relationships they often get wrong? But if there's any other advice that you feel like is worth sharing, floor is yours.
Okay, ask me the question one more time.
Sure. So it's give your honest advice to men. What is something you wish men knew about attraction and relationships that they often get wrong?
Okay. I feel like
Take your time.
I know it's so big. Okay. My advice to men is to be more themselves, even if that is a total asshole. I have a dear friend that I made last year who is a man who helped me as a creative coach, who's kind of an asshole. He
Hmm.
has a great Substack, and I'm reading his articles, but then we're having our sessions, and he's super like curious and supportive as a coach. And then I'm reading his Substack, which is very personal, and I'm like, I just finally one day tell him, I'm like, you're kind of an asshole, and he's like, I am. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool, And so it's not like I don't mean he's an asshole, like sorry, I've said that word a lot of times.
Cussing is totally fine.
Okay, I didn't know like
Yeah, no, this is all explicit. I want people to be real.
okay, so anyway, so basically, it's not like he is being a jerk on purpose,
Hmm.
but in the category that we're putting, that he's holding himself in, and the personality trait that he's identifying with, he is blunt and straightforward. He will engage in conflict when he has a question, not conflict because he's wounded or because his ego is inflated. I mean, maybe, whatever, we're all human,
I know what
but
you're saying.
more like he's direct and he's
Yeah.
abrupt and he's going to bring this thing forward. And that is freaking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I just wish men would bring more of themselves forward. I'm
Yeah.
saying, even if you are kind of a chump, like bring it. Let's see it. At least I get to decide if I am interested in who you really are.
Yeah.
The worst thing is the bait and switch.
Yeah.
And also our nervous systems, the resonance of our nervous systems, like just like I couldn't help but be attracted to a man who's only 5'5", I couldn't help it. I
Right.
was. Like
Yeah.
it just happened.
Yeah.
Like, my nervous system was drawn to whatever authenticity his nervous system was putting off. It's just like when you're, you know, afraid and you have your child's hand in your hand, and they're like, "Oh, mom, like, are we gonna be okay?" And they're like, "Oh my God, mom," and you're like, "It's okay, everything's okay." Like the child already knows. Our bodies know.
Yeah.
Attraction is just part of our natural biology, and so who you are already shows. It
Yeah.
might not show with your words, even your actions, what I'm seeing on the outside, but the resonance is felt and known. So you can't hide. So stop. Stop hiding. I want to see it. Be the phallus. Be the number one.
Be
To my
erect. Be
girl.
out there.
Be like BDE, baby. Like that is the true BDE. And so that's my advice for men, is just be who you are. Be who you
I
are. Like broken, wounded, a hot freaking mess. Like how many guys, men and women, you see women with men who are hot mess all the time.
Oh
And
yeah.
they go to brunch and all their girlfriends like, I don't know why you're with him. You're so much better than him. And she's like, I know, but like he needs me. And like, nah, 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 nah. And like his hot mess is showing and
Yeah.
she stays with him,
Yeah.
not condoning that
Sure.
relationship. I'm just saying the hot mess shows and the hot mess still gets the gal,
Yeah.
right?
I think when I give advice, I stereotypical as it is, normally I'm like, being yourself is going to be the quickest way for everyone to get what they want. If
One,
you are being yourself, you're going to attract somebody that is attracted to that.
100%.
And
If
if you get
you,
that, great.
yeah, yes, yeah. And if you are going from point A to point B, and point A is me, and point B is me in a relationship, why do we need to go through A point one to A point 1,000 to B point one to B point 1,000? Can we just get to B? Can we just get,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
to here is like, I swear,
Yeah.
and
And
it's terrifying.
yeah.
That's
And
when like nervous system regulation and all the other therapies come in. But yes,
And if you're pretending to be something or you're acting in a way that you think you're supposed to be acting, I think people pick up on it. First off, I think people pick up on you're not being authentic, and that kind of puts me off a little bit. I think you can also run the risk of attracting people that you're not interested in,
that you're not attracted to.
that you're not attracted to. Exactly.
As
Um, so nobody wins if you're not being fully
nobody,
yourself. Nobody wins.
nobody. I think that we're in the most beautiful, pivotal time in society when, I mean, like, just take a look around. Just read any news source.
Yeah.
Literally, I don't care what your political affiliation is. Any news source, take a look around. Like, you can be whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. And you don't get to control whether you win or lose, but what feels like winning, is that moment of authentic connection with anyone, even if it's the bagger at the grocery store. The checker's not paying attention to you, and the bagger looks you in the eyes and is like, "Hey, how's it going? How's your day today?" And you're like, somebody just saw me. Like, that's life. That's what it is. And so, whatever you're saying out there on social media, first of all, let's just shut that app down.
Yeah.
And then, second of all, just practice saying something super simple, to quote the Barbie movie, like, I am enough. Like,
Yeah.
I just like,
Yeah.
you're human with consciousness. Like, what else do we need?
Exactly. Like me for who I am, or let's just move on. Let's
Yeah,
just move on with our lives. It's not the end of the world.
totally.
Kat, you've been a great guest. I appreciate you sharing your personal story.
Yeah,
And I think you're gonna give a lot of men hope. So
I
I
hope so. I think
am
hope is, thank you for using that word. Just a last nugget. Hope is a very undervalued, overused resource.
yeah,
Hope is a beautiful currency. And if you are truly seeking a companion, authenticity, connection, whatever it is, the thing you really want that you can't bring yourself to act according to, start with hope. I hope I can be better. I hope I can attract that person. Because hope is way more valuable than poker chips on a table. Hope is like pure gold to get you where you want to go. So I'm so
wow.
glad you did that. I hope for all the people, all the men listening, I hope I will share my hope with you that you have your own hope towards your goals and what you really want.
Wow. That's a better final note than I would have ever been able to put together. So again, Kat, I appreciate the time and you talking to a complete stranger about this. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was such a joy, such a great time.